How's it going, everyone? So today we're going to talk more about this significant winter storm that's expected to bring potentially historic snow totals throughout many areas of the Midwest, and we could even see that heavy snowfall move into the Mid-Atlantic and portions of the Northeast. So let's begin by taking a look at the GFS model 78 hours out. This is Monday, January 6th, and we clearly see a very elongated area of heavy snowfall. Look at the darker shades of blue. This represents very heavy snowfall, and not only that, look at the shades of pink as well. There is that possibility of a freezing rain threat, which is definitely worrisome, as typically speaking, a freezing rain event, especially when you at least see over a quarter or a half an inch of ice accumulate, could be a lot more impactful than a heavy snowfall threat, and that's certainly in the realm of possibilities right over the Ohio River Valley. So that is definitely concerning, and continuing to move forward with the forecast, we see that snowfall will eventually move into the mid-Atlantic states, where Washington, D.C. could get involved with heavy snowfall, same as Philadelphia, the Delmarva Peninsula as well, and portions of Virginia, and Pennsylvania, of course, is getting involved with some snowfall, and even New Jersey is getting involved. Now, in the areas where you do have a little bit more uncertainty, it's right around the rain-snow line, of course, which is usual for most snowstorm threats, as well as where exactly the snow dry line is, which would be at the northern tip of this storm system. So cities like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, New York City, those are the cities where the forecast is a little bit more uncertain, because you're going to be relatively close to the dry line in a lot of those cities, where you're right there to experiencing no snowfall at all if you were to move, let's say, a little bit further northward. So there's still uncertainty regarding this regarding the where exactly you are within those areas, whether you're at the rain snow line or close to the snow dry line. But what I could say for certain is that there is going to be a significant winter storm for the Midwest, and it should move in this sort of area and bring snowfall in this sort of area as well, this sort of general area. I know it sounds very vague, but what I'm trying to say is that it's going to be, this forecast, what you see right now, is going to be very similar to what reality will be for the most part. Look at the forecast, how we're at. We're going at around 3 to 4 days out, and while there's certainly still uncertainty when we're talking about forecasts that's 3 to 4 days out, it definitely becomes a lot easier to really get the general idea of what's going to happen. So in the areas, if you aren't close to the rain snow line, let's say right over a city like Indianapolis, for example, or Columbus, Ohio, I'll say there's a high amount of certainty you will experience a significant winter storm threat, and same goes for the areas of northern Missouri into Nebraska, Kansas as well. Kansas City should get involved with accumulating snowfall, as it's almost guaranteed at this point, as the certainty's very high, especially when the European model is also showing a very similar forecast, where it takes this storm system towards a very similar trajectory. The storm system, in terms of its shape itself, it's very similar to the GFS model, so we could say that there is a good amount of certainty with this forecast, even as far east as Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. You guys will likely experience a heavy amount of accumulating snowfall. Now, in terms of how much snowfall you should expect based on what the computer models are stating, let's first start with the GFS model. So taking a quick look at that, we're going to take a look at the snow depth change. That gives a better representation of how much snow you should expect. And we could be talking about historic snow totals here, where we're talking about over a foot of snow over southern Illinois, Indiana, right over Cincinnati. So to put it in perspective, the most snowfall Cincinnati has ever seen in one day is 11.4 inches, which was way back in 1998. And for this storm system, you very well could have that possibility of potentially beating that record, where the current forecast in the GFS model is that you would experience 11 inches, which is right around the record amount of snowfall you received in one snowstorm in Cincinnati. And I'm sure it's going to be a very similar situation for many other areas as well in southern Indiana, Illinois, even into St. Louis. You could experience close to, if not over, a foot of snowfall based on what the GFS model is stating. So this is this would be very, very impactful for pretty much every area that's relatively close to the Ohio Valley. In terms of other areas, we see Kansas City as well gets involved with 6 to 10 inches of snowfall. This extends into southern Nebraska, Kansas, northern Missouri experiences maybe close to a foot of snow. And then going into the cities further northward, where I did say the certainty was a little bit less. In cities like Chicago and Detroit, we do see that the current forecast is right around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall, but you aren't very far from that area where you do receive 6 to 10 inches of snowfall. But at this point, based on what the computer models are stating, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for a city like Chicago and Detroit to maybe see over 6 inches of snow from this storm system, because it seems like the computer models are really honing in on the idea of bringing the heaviest snowfall right over this general area, just to the north of the Ohio Valley, or I should say the right along the Interstate 70 corridor, as it's going to take a pretty significant change when it comes to the trajectory of the storm system for Chicago to experience over 6 inches of snowfall. So I do expect the general range in Chicago should be right around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall for the storm system. Same goes for Detroit. And then if we were to shift our focus to the snow totals we could see further eastward, we see that Washington, D.C., you could experience 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. Same goes for Philadelphia. And New York City, the forecast does become a little bit more uncertain because you're closer to the dry line, but the GFS model especially has been leaning towards the idea of bringing the snowfall a little bit further northward, to where maybe New York City and northern New Jersey could experience more accumulating snowfall than what you see right here. It really all depends on the strength of this storm system by the time it approaches northeast, because there's still uncertainty about that, because both of the computer models expect this storm system to weaken by the time this approaches the northeast. As you could probably tell by what the GFS model is saying, it's very strong in this area with its millibar pressure dropping down to the 990s before it eventually, definitely doesn't fizzle out, but certainly weakens by the time it approaches northeast, mainly because the ridging weakens just to the west of this storm system. So we see a weaker pressure gradient that would bring that colder air further southward, and that reduces the instability, which is exactly why we see the storm system weaken by the time it approaches the northeast, which makes it a little bit more difficult to receive the same heavy snow totals you'd see right up along the Ohio Valley. So the key thing will be the amount of ridging just to the west of this storm system. We won't really get a good idea, I'll say, until maybe the Sunday timeframe, once the storm system actually develops right over the Midwest. So definitely keep tabs on that in the Northeast. But the stronger this storm is, of course, the more likely you're going to receive much more accumulating snowfall from this storm system right over the Northeast. So definitely keep tabs on that over the next few days. But I do expect places like Philadelphia, New York City, and Washington, D.C. to have a high chance of receiving accumulating snowfall. Now, the rain-snow line will also be key. That also really depends on the amount of ridging just to the east of this storm system. If the ridging is a little stronger, you should expect the rain-snow line a little bit further northward, and the snowfall to move a little bit further northward, to where Chicago and Detroit might get a little bit more involved. And so as New York City, while the cities further southward like Louisville, St. Louis even, and Cincinnati, you might not experience as much accumulating snowfall, or potentially an even worse scenario where you receive more of a freezing rain threat in those cities. So we're definitely going to keep close attention to where exactly that rain snow line will develop. But I think the most likely scenario is that cities like Cincinnati, Louisville, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Kansas City, you will experience accumulating snowfall out of this, and it'll likely be very heavy, anywhere between the 6 to 12 inch of snowfall range, and even more depending on where that rain snow line is. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next few days. Taking a look at the European model, we do see a key difference, however, and the key difference is that the European model takes the snowfall a lot further southward because it expects the ridging just to the north of it to be quite a bit stronger. So that keeps the heaviest snowfall in a more isolated area. So in a city like Chicago and Detroit, where you're experiencing right around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall in the GFS model scenario, you're experiencing little to no snowfall at all in those cities, which shows that there's still a decent amount of uncertainty in those cities like Chicago and Detroit. And of course, the rain snow line, that's also another concern. Another interesting thing too is that while the snowfall is a little bit less northward in the European model scenario, the rain snow line is less northward as well, as this storm system overall is a lot more squished in the European model scenario, where there's just a very isolated area of snowfall, and the colder air is more persistent in the European model scenario, which is the reason why we see a stronger dry line, but also a rain snow line that's further southward. So we're definitely going to need to keep tabs on this as well, see which computer model will end up being more correct. And like I said, we won't get a good idea probably until Saturday and Sunday once we see how strong this ridge is just to the north of it. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated. But again, still, generally speaking, in the areas in right over the Ohio River Valley in the Interstate 70 corridor, it's very similar to the point where I'd expect heavy snowfall regardless of which computer model is correct, anywhere between 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. Let me show you guys a European model scenario. So in the European model's forecast, we see a very similar scenario, bringing heavy snowfall to a lot of the same areas as what the GFS model is forecasting. We're seeing 3 to 6 inches or 6 to 12 inches of snowfall for the most part over the Interstate 70 corridor. This includes Washington, D.C., this includes Cincinnati, this includes Indianapolis, this includes St. Louis as well, in Kansas City. All these areas could experience 6 to 12 inches of snowfall, and even areas where you could experience over a foot of snowfall, which again would be very historic for much of the Ohio River Valley. So definitely keep tabs on this, definitely prepare for this, because it's almost guaranteed this is going to happen in a lot of these areas at this point. There could be differences when it comes to the range of snowfall accumulation you see depending on where that rain snow line is, but regardless, you likely will experience a heavy amount of snowfall, whether it's 6 inches of snowfall or 10 inches of snowfall or even up to 18 inches of snowfall. You definitely need to prepare the same way in a lot of these areas right over the Ohio River Valley, as it's likely to happen at this point. And you're probably wondering, how likely is it to happen? Well, let's take a look at the National Weather Service's chance forecast when it comes to experiencing at least moderate snowfall. We see that the chance is higher than 50% right over northern Missouri into Illinois, now extending into the Indianapolis area, and that chance is likely to rise over the next few days if we were to get a little bit more consistency with the computer models. And even right over Washington, D.C., we see the chances very high for experiencing at least moderate snowfall. Same goes for the Delmarva Peninsula, and the chance will likely only increase over the next few days. And remember, there is a pretty significant worry when it comes to ice accumulation. So over Kentucky, West Virginia, Southern Illinois, into Missouri and Kansas, definitely be prepared for that possibility of freezing rain as well, which should create just very impactful and dangerous impacts on the roads. Make sure if it's snowing heavy outside or if you're experiencing a freezing rain threat, don't take it lightly. Definitely take it very seriously, because I've seen too many accidents on the roadways for people, unfortunately, not taking freezing rain seriously. So definitely be prepared for that over the Ohio River Valley. But that's it for now, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more updates when it comes to winter storms. And make sure to stay safe and stay prepared all throughout the Ohio River Valley. So thank you guys for watching.